topic nowadays. The discussion surrounding the safeguarding children online has indeed grown more urgent in recent months, particularly with regard to the methods used by providers to confirm users' ages on social media platforms and impact on children users' fundamental rights. Today's hearing will examine age verification mechanisms, balancing child safety with their fundamental rights, including the protection of their personal data. In the hearing, the speakers will assess both the feasibility and the implications of age verification, age assurance, and age estimation techniques, considering their intrusiveness, accuracy, and operational demands. With a broad range of stakeholders, including child rights organizations, industry, and academia, we will have a discussion to ensure a safer online experience for minors while respecting the rights and privacy in the digital sphere. We will have two panels. The first panel will cover the institutional perspectives of age verification. The speakers taking part in this panel are Mr. Ivo Vollmann, Director in DG Connect, Mr. Vincent Tubiana, Head of the French Data Protection Authority's Legal Innovation Lab, and Mr. Francisco Pérez-Bes, Deputy to the Presidency of the Spanish Data Protection Authority, that will be intervening remotely. Thank to all of you for being with us today in person for this important hearing, and Mr. Pérez-Bes connected remotely. And without further delay, I will now give the floor to Mr. Vollmann from DG Connect. Mr. Vollmann, the floor is yours for 5 minutes for your initial presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and thanks for the invitation to this panel on a very important topic indeed. Now, let me start with a bit of context. The EU has a comprehensive and ambitious framework in place for the protection of minors, and at the heart of it is, of course, the Digital Services Act, and we are enforcing the DSA's provisions really with the necessary speed and rigor. There are guidelines in place under Article 28 of the DSA, and these guidelines set out, amongst other measures, when platforms should implement age assurance technologies, depending on the level of risk, and they furthermore establish minimum criteria for these technologies. Now, just last week, the Commission found Meta preliminarily in breach of the DSA for failing to diligently identify, assess, and mitigate the risk of minors under 13 from accessing their services. The legal framework is complemented by policy actions to protect and empower our children, starting with our Better Internet for Children strategy, and this includes co-funding for the network of safer internet centers across the EU. In addition, the President has convoked a special panel on child safety online and potential age limits for social media and other online services in Europe, and this panel will deliver recommendations to the Commission by summer. So let me move to age verification itself. It's really a very important piece of the puzzle for protecting minors online. A safer online environment and age-related restrictions can only work if there are robust, reliable, and privacy-preserving age verification mechanism in place. And it's important to do this at the European level. We must preserve the integrity of the internal market here. Now, to have a harmonized age verification method that can work across Europe, the Commission has developed an EU age verification solution, a blueprint. The technical work is done by an external contractor. It's an experienced consortium, and they have developed technical specifications and a piece of software in the form of a concrete mobile app. And that can be taken up by anyone, by member states or by private sector players. Now, the solution was originally designed for the 18+ category, but it can in principle also take into account any required age limits such as 13+ or 15+. Now, we want to make sure that our children don't get easy access to inappropriate content, but at the same time, we want to make sure that this does not lead to the tracking of what people do on the internet or the collection of personal data for that matter. And therefore, the European solution is really designed to meet the highest privacy and data protection standards. Now, of course, we have also taken into account the statement of the EDPB of February last year on this topic. And the solution uses state-of-the-art technology, cryptographic technology, that can safely prove that the user has a valid proof of age without revealing the proof itself or any other information. So the proof of age contains no identity data and not even the exact age. The only information that the site gets with the solution is that a user is over a certain age. So the sites do not know who you are. The solution prevents identity tracking. The user of the credentials, that's the issuer of the credentials, sorry, the organization that gives the assurance that you're over 18, they can never know what site you visit. So no personal data is stored on the app or shared. So where do we stand with the solution, which is an important one to move forward? On the 15th of April, the Commission President announced that our age verification solution is technically complete. All the features are there. Testing has taken place with online platforms and with users. Now, it should be rapidly be taken up by member states and by private providers. So it's not available in the app stores yet, but it may be soon. In the meantime, the contractor will continue to issue releases of the software, also taking into account feedback from the IT community. It's open source, so anyone can contribute to make it better, and anyone can also see what the software does and what it doesn't do. Last week, the Commission adopted a recommendation, and that does do basically two things. On the one hand, it asked member states to get their act together, to take up this app and turn it into reality in the app stores. And secondly, it puts in place a governance system for private sector apps. So we make sure that private sector apps are vetted under this system if they're building on the age verification blueprint. So this solution is also available for third countries, and I'm going a bit over time, Chair, if you allow. It's open source, so it can be taken up by them. There's a lot of interest. In any meetings with partners from third countries, they always want to know, wow, what is this? We are really interested, and they want to get a demonstration of how it works. So, in conclusion, we have made significant progress towards a Europe-wide solution for age verification, the most reliable system of all. It's following the highest standards in terms of privacy friendliness, and at the same time, it will be an important tool for preventing children from seeing inappropriate content. So we're very happy to further engage on this, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Volman. And now we move to our next speaker, Mr. Vincent Toubiana, head of the French Data Protection Authority's Digital Innovation Lab. The floor is yours for 5 minutes for your initial...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for this invitation. Je vais parler en français, si c'est possible.
I'll be speaking French, if that's okay. Now, CNIL's been involved in age verification from 2021 onwards. That's when we started looking at this following a law that was implemented in France, implementing age verification for porn sites. So we wanted a third party, independent third party, to carry out the age verification. We didn't want it to be the providers themselves to collect information in relation to the users of their websites, and for them to correlate the age to their user history. And we very much insisted on the point of data protection and what kind of guarantees could be put in place and what could be done in terms of age verification. So we continued with our work in 2022 and started by looking at a state of play of the solutions that were already in existence when it came to age verification. You have the classic solutions, checking ID cards, for example, an ID document with biometrics. There's a payment card method, which is used as well. But there are also solutions that were emerging at the time, where you look at someone's face and you have age estimation techniques. So basically we classified the various solutions and looked at what their advantages and disadvantages were in terms of accessibility to the population, acceptability for citizens, and also when it came to data protection. Now, at the time, of course, we came to the conclusion that there wasn't a single solution that provided all of the necessary guarantees for people to be able to prove their age on the internet without there being any risk for their data. Either the age verification wasn't very reliable for certain categories of the population, or the payment card solution wasn't perfect either, because it wasn't set up for that purpose. And then the ID checks were there were risks in terms of these data being accessed, and it's not something that all of the population could use. So we came to the conclusion at the time that there was no perfect solution. So what we decided to do, or try and do, is create an ecosystem and to encourage these solutions, privacy-preserving solutions being produced. What also became clear to us is that different types of solutions may be needed to be combined so that you cover the whole population. It wouldn't just be about making one solution available, people who have a European ID card or have a smartphone, for example. So we recommend in particular to be able to label solutions through a certification system so that these are reliable age verification methods which can be recognized by users. We also want to inform users about the risks involved in age verification and want to raise awareness about the types of providers that might be using this. We then also want to develop solutions which are user-friendly. We didn't want centralized solutions which might collect a lot of data. And we also wanted to combine age verification on websites to parental control that might be applied on a smartphone. Now, parental control in itself is not a perfect solution either, because it puts a lot of responsibility on the parents. Now, to encourage the development of these privacy-preserving solutions then, we work together with other French administrations and researchers, and we try to set up an architecture that would allow for age transmission, which is part of the Commission's proposal and solution, without age transmission allowing the provider to identify the person, nor allowing the person wanting the age verification to know what that's being used for. So we had a proof of concept of the architecture. We called it double blind, in the sense that neither of the parties have access to information that doesn't regard them. So they only have access to the information they strictly need. So there's the age verification part on the one side, and then on the other side, there's the fact that the person has to be of a necessary age to have access to the service. So we had an open source proof of concept that allowed us to demonstrate that this was feasible. It's not something that we could industrialize as it stood, but it at least allowed us to come up with this concept, this double-blind concept under French legislation for age verification, and that then pushed people to fine-tune their solutions. We also had exchanges and constant discussions with ARCOM, which is the Digital Services Coordinator in France. And those discussions allowed us to analyze the various age verification solutions. Now, on the protection of minors, there we carried out a study amongst youngsters to try and understand what kind of risk they identify to their privacy rights on social media. We had a qualitative and quantitative study amongst their parents too. I'm not going to dwell on this study, but what became clear is that parents have a major role to play for youngsters as a point of reference when youngsters encounter problems online. And what became clear is that for an age verification method to be effective, it needed to have the parents on board in terms of how it's set up and designed, because otherwise the parents would be the first way round age verification if they weren't included. So we had to raise awareness on that particular point too. Now, I know that this is something which is brought up, these risks of circumventing age verification systems using VPNs, for example, and the fact that that might be stigmatizing. Now, VPNs are very useful for data protection purposes, but when it comes to social media, the use of VPNs wouldn't really allow you to circumvent the age verification solutions. So to point the finger at the VPNs is counterproductive because it's not effective in trying to get around the age verification. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur Tubiana. And now I give the floor to Francisco Pérez-Bes from the Spanish DPA. Señor Pérez-Bes, can you hear us? Can you see us? Okay. Then the floor is yours for 5 minutes for your initial presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Buenas tardes. Disculpas por...
Good afternoon. Apologies for not being able to be with you physically. I will speak in Spanish. And I can say that from the different meetings that we've had with internet providers, etc., we have seen that putting in technical measures seems to be excessive from a judicial point of view. From our side, we think we need to change the focus. We can verify people's identity in different ways. So we don't suggest that platforms have to identify who the user is, but that the user has a minimum required age to access certain content. So, in other words, protection is there by default. When it comes to proving people's age, it's up to the people who access the content. So this means making sure that people have the minimum age, so being over 14, 16 or 18 years of age to be able to access specific content. And that's comparable with current restrictions where people's locations need to be identified, for example. The idea is simple. Classifying groups of minors can increase their risk of vulnerability. However, in general terms, private companies have different methods. They have access to biometric data, people's documents, or people's search history. This profiles people, but also has it creates risks for users. So we don't want to compromise privacy. When it comes to verifying age, it is true that the user can use different documents, passport, etc., or even biometric data. The proposal doesn't negate any of that, but these data should not be shared with third parties, and the user should have exclusive control. The necessary verification can be done for age, for example, without handing over excessive or unnecessary information. And this system would guarantee people's safety, privacy, and not discriminate against them. It wouldn't involve self-censorship, for example. People have sensitive information, and if a user doesn't want to be profiled, they are better off exercising their right to privacy. In December 2023, Spain set out a number of principles for access to the internet with three main objectives: that only those who have the necessary age can access certain content, that they can do it voluntarily when they wish, and that this does not mean that they are profiled. This technique was sent to the European Data Protection Authority, and there was an opinion adopted in 2025. The solutions set out in that opinion allow platforms to comply with the obligations for the DSA as well as GDPR. In this context, there's a clear distinction between age verification, age estimation, etc. Verification means that the user confirms having the necessary age. Estimation could be from their behaviours online or physical traits. However, there are significant margins for error, and that can lead to problems. However, both mechanisms are effective, and they can be incorporated. There isn't a need then to hand over excessive information. All of this won't resolve all of the issues to do with age verification, but it would improve the current situation with an acceptable level of efficiency. So we're talking about going towards the protection of minors, as well as compatibility with privacy and people's protection of their data. We hope that the national plans that are developed will follow GDPR and respect people's rights, and only identify them when, according to the information that is needed, or if they want to access adult content, to make sure that they are adults and not children. I was asked about a specific case. I didn't sign on the sanctions for that specific case that happened a few years ago, the Yote case. But we did focus on looking at the app that was involved in that case and not the providers. The main reasons why there was an issue was because there was an infraction of Article 9 on GDPR on biometric data. There was no processing of data with the necessary consent. And could you please speak a little bit slower for the interpreters, sir? My apologies. As I was saying, there was an infraction of Article 7 of GDPR because the consent wasn't valid from the users, and information was used for different means. There was in Article 5 was infringed also, and because there was excessive use of the data that was collected, and that affected people under the age of 14 years. So there was a 900,000 euro fine given to that platform as a sanction, and we are waiting for the court to give a decision on this case. Thank you, Thank you, sir, for your intervention.
The floor to each group representative for a maximum of 1.5 minutes. Each intervention will be immediately followed by a maximum of 1.5 minutes reply by our guest speaker. As we have 3 guest speakers, please, I invite you to be as precise as possible as to whom you address your question. According to the list, we will start by the groups. EPP, Mrs. Chinichi.
Grazie Presidente, grazie molte.
Thank you, Chairman. let me also thank our panelists for their presentations. I have a question for Mr. Volman on behalf of the Commission. Let me start by asking you what, in the Commission's view, are the deadlines for making these apps available to Member States. Is the end of the year a reasonable deadline? Then, when it comes to the Commission's recommendation, which you yourself refer to, and in particular the reference to the recommendations, the recommendation to make sure that cyber security standards are upheld, well, that's of course important to protect minors from the risks they might encounter surfing on the internet. Now, in reference to that recommendation, then, is it the Commission's intention to promote uniform standards on security across Member States? And if so, how will you achieve that? Now, looking at data protection at national level, how should Member States deal with this recommendation? There are already good practices in place, but how can they comply with the recommendation on data protection? And what independence guarantees do third parties need to ensure? The Commission is recommending here that we need to protect minors from online risks, and that's of fundamental importance because I'm the chair of the subgroup on minors' rights, so it's of fundamental importance, but I'm interested in hearing more from you. Now, those are the main points I'd like to make, but there are, of course, more points I could make.
Kinichi, now the representative of the Commission will reply.
Yeah, let me start, and thank you for these questions. So, when will the app concretely be in the app stores, right? I mean, so we have a number of front-runner member states that are moving fast. France is one of them, Denmark is one of them, and the apps are likely to be there in the context of the national identity wallets before the summer. So things are happening. We have a number of other member states where it will definitely happen before the end of the year. But in our recommendation, we ask all member states to have it before the end of the year. And we are going to push and pull to make this happen. Now, when will there be market players taking this up, our app? We don't know. There is interest, but still there is a question around business models. How is this going to work, etc.? So these issues need to be solved. But we would like also private players to take up our blueprint and bring it to the market. Your question on cybersecurity, very pertinent, of course. Now, with the recommendation, we also set in place a system to check the apps, to check them for cybersecurity and also against the specifications of the blueprint, right? So there will be a check whether actually we can say at European level, this is okay as an app that's going to come, that will be available to the citizen from a cybersecurity perspective, but also whether it fully respects everything I described in terms of the privacy-preserving character.
Thank you. Now, S&D, Mr. Rotolo, floor is yours. Yeah, Rotolo.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Allora, bene.
Well, I address my question to Mr. Volman. It's very good that there should be an age verification based on the digital wallet, because that's the only instrument which fully guarantees good management of data. It allows us to see whether or not a user has a particular age without revealing name, surname and date of birth. But I'd like to add to that age verification is only the start. And so it's not useful to try to construct a fortified door if, however, there can be dangers associated with that. We have to make sure that social media generally is a safe place. It's not a question of building walls. So my question is as follows. You explained to us that VPN is not really useful for getting around the checks, because VPN actually is for geographical location or to protect privacy. But if a platform, in any case, wants to have proof through the age verification system, VPN on its own, as you said, is not useful. We accept that. But as you have said, we've got other sources such as parents. So that being the case, how can we guarantee that the adoption of this instrument doesn't give a false sense of security, making the platforms disinvest in the actual active protection of young people? And so I'm coming to my conclusion, Chairman. We don't want a situation in which the responsibility falls on the parents. It's the platforms who have to provide a safe digital space in which no one can get round the system. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for raising these important points. Well, as you rightly say, age verification is only one of the building blocks. What we also need is very vigorous enforcement of the DSA, and that's actually what we're doing. TikTok has had to change its model because of the actions of the colleagues. There have been letters sent to a number of porn sites, adult content sites, that will have to change the way they verify that children cannot get onto the site, and not just because you say I'm over 18, right? So there's a whole package of activities around the protection of minors that is taking shape, and of course the enforcement actions under the DSA are at the core of that. Now, your question about children getting around the age verification app. If you want to avoid that, well, then you're out for a very invasive system, and that is not what we decided to do. So by design, we have not tried to make the perfect system. We have made a system that will work well as a first line of defense. But look, take the analogy of buying tobacco or buying alcohol. Well, children cannot. We have a system to prevent children from buying tobacco or alcohol in shops, right? But you cannot prevent a parent giving a cigarette or a bottle of liquor to a child. I mean, that would go very far, and if you want to do that, it would be very invasive. So what we have found here is a system that is not at all invasive from the point of view of privacy. It really has all the guarantees that only the site can see that the person accessing is over a certain age, right? But we haven't tried to turn this into the perfect system that would be very invasive. And I think that's the strength of the system.
Thank you. Now, for the PFE, Mr. Vioch, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thanks for our guest being here. I have a few basic questions. I was here since the very beginning, so if you mention it, I'm really sorry about that. If we're talking about the age verification app, where are the data stored? It's in the application by the phone, or it's sending data somewhere else? First question. The second question is, if, for example, I have the application, I upload my ID, is the application asking also to upload my picture, that the application knows that it's really me uploading that ID? And also, again, are the data, are the application just itself trying to find out if the data are correct and reading the documents, or is this data sent somewhere else to be qualified? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Butch.
Yeah, no, indeed. So where is the data stored? There's actually no data stored apart from the fact that you're over a certain age. So there's no data stored on the app at all, apart from the certificate that you're over a certain age. So that is really important. Now, your question about uploading the picture, right? There are different methods actually to get the certification that you're over a certain age. That are in the basic app, that are possible, right? One is with your digital identity. Another is by connecting to a trusted app that you're using already, like a banking app, right, that guarantees that you're over a certain age. Then there's the method that you refer to. You can use your passports, scan the passports, and then make a comparison through a little film on your phone. It sounds difficult, but it's actually quite easy. That compares that it's you, and that then gives you the certificate that you're over a certain age on your phone. And you can also go, but that's a very old-fashioned method, to a postal office, for example, to get, well, I don't think that many people would do that. So all this data is immediately destroyed after you get this certificate that you're over a certain age. So there is no data stored at all. And there's no data sent anywhere. Actually, the app doesn't only guarantee that the sites cannot see who you are. It doesn't only guarantee that the issuer cannot see what you do on sites. But even if all the sites collude together, or if there's collusion between the issuer and the sites, then still they cannot find out who you are. That's this new technology, zero-knowledge proof, that guarantees that. So it's actually stronger even than the double blind that colleague described.
Thank you. Now I have no ECR speaker here. The group of Renew, is anyone taking the floor? Yes, Ms. Trojanova, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to all the experts for being here. I have a question for the Commission. So you mentioned now that there's multiple ways how to prove your identity. So one of them will be a biometric scan after uploading the ID or the passport. Would that be one of the ways? That's one of my questions. And then how about the platforms? Will they be required to disclose quite openly what kind of method of age verification or age assurance they use? Not just buried in some technical terms, but will the ultimate user know how they're dealing with the age verification issue? And if these systems, if the age verification app makes mistakes, right, because obviously it will at some point, what mechanisms will be in place to ensure that the users can challenge maybe and correct the incorrect age assessments quickly and effectively? Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, let me start with the last one, because I don't see how the age verification app would make mistakes. If it's based on your digital identity or information from your bank or your passports. So I don't think it will make mistakes. That's the strong point. In a very non-invasive way, you actually get very precise information. And actually with things like, well, age estimation, you don't get that type of guarantees. And there will be things that go wrong in terms of the age estimation. Actually, that method is more invasive than what we have put on the table here. Now, this biometric scan, it's one of the possibilities that are offered by the app. We know that there are different practices in different member states. So in some member states, this will be possible. In other member states, this will not be taken up as one of the methods. Basically, you scan your passport, the chip, but also the photo, and then you have to make a little film that compares that it's really you, and on that basis, you get the certificate in your phone. Now, again, will it be possible for a parent to give the certificate to their children and go around the system? Yes, but it's not made to be 100% proof in that sense. It's like, the parents giving the cigarettes, right? Now, on the platforms, whether they will be forced to disclose what they use. Now, of course, there is a strong process in place under the Digital Services Act under Article 28. They have obligations and they have to report. But I don't know whether there's an explicit, yes, there is. So perhaps Julia, the DSA expert, can say a few words.
Good afternoon, everyone, and many thanks for this pertinent question. So actually, the DSA guidelines set out quite explicitly what platforms need to do. So for specific high-risk platforms, think here of platforms selling alcohol, but also pornographic platforms, they need to put in place age verification. Then for medium-risk platforms, such as certain social media websites, they can go for either age estimation or age verification. But in any case, what the guidelines set out is this mere click where you go through the system and you say, I'm over or under 18, is not enough. So platforms cannot do that under the guidelines under the DSA. So the guidelines themselves set also out specific criteria for the methods that they need to use for age assurance. So they set out that they need to be accurate, reliable, robust, non-intrusive, and non-discriminatory. And these guidelines have also been consulted with the EDPB, who also agreed to the high privacy standard that was set out in the guidelines as such. So the guidelines don't specifically set out which age estimation method need to be used. However, they do sort of hold the AV app as the golden standard to do that. And also allow for private solutions to be offered that offer that same level of security. Now, we know that at the moment, perhaps the level is not yet good enough on online platforms, and that is also why we have like a number of open investigations on this. So just last week, we preliminarily concluded that Meta is not in compliance with the DSA because it still allows minors under 13 on its platform, even though it states itself in its own terms and conditions that they should not be on their platform. Furthermore, we have open investigations against TikTok on a similar matter, as well as into Snapchat, and we also issued preliminarily that 4 pornographic platforms are not compliant with the DSA either, because they simply have this click-through system, whereas we require them to have age verification in place. So this is really something that is on the top of our mind and that we follow very closely, and we think that the platforms need to do more.
Thank you. And now I give the floor to Group of the Greens. Mrs. Gregorova, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First, some comments and questions to Mr. Vollmann. So first of all, you've just mentioned in reply to my colleague, Ms. Ostrihonova, that you cannot imagine how facial recognition could be faulty. I was super surprised by this, but because first of all, facial recognition is famously faulty, it is racist, it is discriminatory, it's not working in many cases. We also, of course, know, and you just mentioned it yourself, that, or your colleague mentioned it, that the companies are setting it up in a way that's bypassable. And also we know from the case of Australia, where 7 out of 10 minors are on social media anyway, that these days it's super easy to bypass them, for instance, through AI, facial filters, which you can apply to both your ID card and to your face. So that's the answer for Ms. Ostrihonova, which I'm surprised you didn't give, and you can maybe answer to me why you didn't give it, because you should be the one knowing that. Secondly, I know we are talking about new thing per se, the new, for France not, but the new age verification app, but I need to go back to DSA, because DSA is stating that minors' protection shall not oblige providers of online platforms to process additional personal data in order to assess whether the recipient of the service is minor. But your guidelines on DSA are going against this provision in DSA. Why is that? Thirdly, why don't you prioritize investigations regarding the business models, algorithms, and everything that's still not concluded? We have DSA. Why do we need another thing that was easily hacked in the first day of its use? I'm sorry, I have to mention that, because it was. And instead, don't focus on the actual toxic business models and algorithms and designs that we should already be able to resolve under DSA. It just seems like we are afraid to actually use the DSA DSA, which is like a bazooka against the digital platforms. Why are we just, using new ways of giving data to the big tech? And yeah, I already mentioned that. Hack, you can react to it or not. And to Ms. Toubiana, in France, ARCOM has published recommendations on how to implement age verification in relation to the law enforcing age verification on porn platforms. And one of the principles in these guidelines is double anonymity and the fact that this option has to be available for users. Can I ask you, how have the platforms complied with this? If they did, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Greorova. Mr. Fol.
Yeah, so I think I didn't make myself understood on face recognition. Face recognition in itself is not a very sure method. It's an age estimation as a method that is often problematic and often gets to the wrong result. What I did say is actually that the methods used in the app, well, something must go really wrong to get the wrong age. And I used there the example of the most risky method in that sense. That's when you use your passport, you scan your passport, and then you do a check against that by making a little film of your face, only to get this age certification, this certificate. I think it's two completely different situations. Age assurance through face recognition, or what I describe here. Just a few words on what you call the hack. A lot has been made out of that. Now, what is out there? The blueprint is not in production. So this is not a service that's on the app stores. Normally, before you go into the app stores, there is a hardening process. That's the work that needs to be done by the member states also before they put something out there for the public to use. Having said that, I think it's actually very useful that these comments came in from the community. That's the whole point of open source, that you get these comments, that you can improve. And the consortium has worked on this. A number of things have been patched, and there will be further comments in, and further releases will be released by the contractor. Now, I think that what will be done further in terms of testing, even this app that's not in production, goes far beyond what you would normally do for a demo app. But then again, I think it's important that when member states do take up the software, that, okay, they're already as far as you can get.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question on ARCOM and double anonymity. And we've worked with them. And when I was mentioning double blind, it was actually double anonymity. I like both are the same thing. We've worked with them and on defining double anonymity. And so since it's in the law, well, at first, many websites were not doing age verification at all. So the first step was to do enforcement so that they do age verification. That has been done, and now most of them do age verification. And so now comes the phase about double anonymity, and so ARCOM has started to do enforcement on that as well. We know that industrials are providing solutions that are providing double anonymity. So it's moving. Not all websites are providing solution with double anonymity yet, but some of them are, and the solutions to do that are existing. So it's a good way, and it's moving in the right direction.
Can you add some very brief remarks? Yeah?
Yes, just very briefly. As I set out previously, we think actually the guidelines are very much in line with the GDPR. We have also consulted upon this with the EDPB, as well as done a broad public consultation, which also involved experts on privacy. Now, on the DSA as a whole and its enforcement, and this also goes back to Mr. Rutolo's earlier point, protection of minors and the enforcement of the DSA is really our utmost priority, and we have taken very concrete steps this year to follow up on that. So I already mentioned the previous cases before on age assurance, But on top of that, we just took quite extensive steps against TikTok, where we preliminarily found that they actually have an addictive design on their services and do not provide the high level of privacy, safety, and security for minors that is necessary under the DSA. Now, of course, the company has the right to defend itself at the moment. Then, on top of that, we have further ongoing investigations on the addictive design of these platforms, including into Meta, which is Facebook and Instagram, as well as Shein and TikTok. And we have numerous other ongoing investigations. The enforcement of the DSA, especially when it comes to the protection of minors, is really one of our #1 priorities. And while we, of course, need to do the most that we can to make sure that these cases that we move forward are also very legally solid, we do everything that we can to also advance them as rapidly as possible.
Thank you. I have no speakers from the group of the left or the ESN. Yes, so I give now the floor to Madame Sorel.
J'ai plusieurs questions.
Thank you. Well, I have several questions. The first is for the European Commission, Mr. Volman. Various colleagues have mentioned this, and the question is still not very clear about open source and whether it's going to be improved. It seems to me there's a problem of trust on the part of the users as regards putting out their personal data. You talk about destruction of the information. How can we be sure that it will be destroyed? And a second question, the Commissioner Verkunen has said we have to neutralize VPNs. Do you confirm that statement on the part of the Commissioner? Because your French colleague has said that this is not a big issue, the fact of VPNs. And Mr. Tobiana, a question for you on the fact that each of the parties has only a part of the information. How do you check that? You spoke about a study where the people said something about threats. I'd like to know more about this interesting study. And finally, on parents. I'm a parent. I don't understand why you are so reluctant about this, so sensitive about this. Why cannot we need their cooperation? You're talking about it being rather cumbersome. Well, indeed, but having children means having responsibilities, so we have to have the courage to say that.
From Madame Sorel, you're taking it.
I will start. You're absolutely right that the trust in the app is essential. And how can you be sure that there is no data stored? Well, a specialist can go and look at the code of the app, actually, that there is no data stored. That is also a strong point of open source. You can see what happens with the data, and the data is not stored on the app. So you don't have to trust me, but an expert can go and look at the code of the app.
Oui. Merci pour les questions.
Thank you very much for those questions. It's sort of the same thing in terms of how we check the information. We don't collect anything that isn't strictly necessary. You have to look at the flow of data that is available and connect to a site and see how they've collected the information and what data have they got. We can try to do that and see what the connection there is. So we do look into that to ensure. On the question of the study, it's on our site and it's about minors. About 40 young people were studied, and we also took into consideration the parents. So we're able to have a picture of the application with these young people, these school children. It's an app which has been launched, and we're very happy about that. On the question now, well, I'm not saying at all that we shouldn't lean on the parents, we shouldn't trust the parents, not at all. But the easiest solution, I think it's quite natural. We see that parents don't always understand the risks involved, and they don't necessarily stop the children from connecting. So I can accept that. But the main risk is to make sure, we have to make sure that the parents are aware of the risks. Because it is complicated, you're right, but smartphones as well is something very complicated for a lot of parents who don't have digital literacy.
We conclude this first panel. I will take two interventions. I will group them together. Mr. López Aguilar and then Mr. Grims. Okay. Mr. López Aguilar, floor is yours.
Thank you. For some time, this has been highest priority for many of us here in the European Parliament, particularly, of course, in this LIBE committee, which is so keen to fundamental rights approach to issues that have to do with the protection of minors. So we have discussed thoroughly for years all age verification strategies and initiatives at hand. And yes, now there is a move by the European Commission, and I would like to ask the European Commission about the timeline to have it effectively implemented. And of course, taken for granted that it's going to be safe under the point of view of the architecture of safeguards to the rights which are involved and protected. More than that, what is the idea of enforcement that this age verification tool, age verification application is going to have as to compel the platforms to be law-abiding, because we have seen also for years that digital platforms do have a business model that has to do a lot with its influence on those who are willing to accept that kind of a game. And the thing is that, of course, parental guardian is not enough. There has to be also some enforcement by the European Commission as to EU law, so that platforms are actually systematically compelled to implement age verification in a reliable way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. López Aguilar. Mr. Grims.
Thank you very much. My speech will differ much from others because, first of all, we talk a lot about the DSA today, as it is a great achievement. As a matter of fact, the DSA is something that is against the basic human right of freedom of speech and should never be accepted as it is now, and should be abolished completely with all the consequences. That's the first problem we're facing today. The second is that we talk about how to protect children. If we want to protect our children, the children of the European nations, we should protect our borders, close them, and make their immigration. That would be the best we can do to protect them and also to protect women and all the rest inside the European Union. And with this, what we are facing today, I don't see something that will protect kids. Kids will protect their parents if they speak to them freely, if they make clear limitations. I did it with my 3 kids, and they're beautiful and have never had any problems. So I'm speaking as a father. And we don't need a state to do this for us. As a matter of fact, I'm afraid that all we are speaking about is just about control, about the ending of the freedom of speech on the internet as it is as has been and as it is now. And this is why I oppose this completely and absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You are taking you start, Mr. Volman, and that will be your final remarks.
Yeah, let me start with the last point. And what we are trying to do is really finding a way to protect children in the least invasive way from a privacy perspective. So that's what we're trying to do here. Now, on your question on the timeline, we have a number of front-runner member states that are working on basically having this service available soon. France and Denmark are the first ones, most likely. Spain also, but later in the year. And there are 4 others that are among the front runners. Now, we have asked the member states to do it before the end of the year. Not all of them will comply, but that's in the recommendation that we issued last year. So your point about speed, we take that very seriously, and we are pushing member states. Now, last week in Nicosia, the ministers were there together, and there was convergence that this is really an important action and also commitment to move. Let's see how fast that goes. On the enforcement, well, Julia has indicated what we're doing in terms of the enforcement. Article 28 is there, and the platforms are feeling the heat. They also know that they have to have reliable age verification measures in place. And if they build on the specifications of our blueprint, they know they're also relatively safe, that this is a good method that will be accepted. So that's why this blueprint and the app is so important also in view of the enforcement for the platforms.
Thank you. Ms. Triana, would you like to add any final remark? Okay. Señor Bess, quisiera usted...
Mr. Bess, would you like to add any final remarks? Thank you very much. I think it's very important, having listened to the questions from the MEPs. They explained themselves very well. It's very important for everyone to understand how the technology works on both sides, especially given what's happening in Spain through our experience. All of this is very important, and the tool that's being presented is essential for everything. The internet as it is, but also how the internet will evolve in the future. It's very important to protect minors in all domains, in families, in the homes, from the European Parliament. So thank you very much for having listened to our opinion.
And now we obviously thank our speakers for their contribution to this extremely important debate, for the explanations provided in a technical issue which is not always easy to grasp, but I'm sure that your explanations has contributed to clarify this issue in which this committee is particularly interested and working on. And now we have to give way to our second panel in our hearing. Well, now let's move then to our second panel, in which we will have the perspective of academia and civil society and industry regarding age verification. The speakers in the second panel would be Professor Kai Rannenberg, Chair of Mobile Business and Multilateral Security at Goethe University in Frankfurt, Mr. Simeon de Bruer, Policy Advisor at European Digital Rights, EDRI, Mrs. Julia Torchio, EU Affairs Officer at Five Rights Foundation, and Mr. Julian Corbett, Head of Open Age Global Initiative. I will first give the floor to Professor Rannenberg from the Goethe University in Frankfurt. So, Professor, we have, 4 speakers, so we'll have to be particularly careful about the management of the time available. I'm glad to give you the floor for 5 minutes for your initial presentation.
Thank you very much. This is what I've planned. Now this will go in 5 minutes. I want to give a bit of an overview of context, even though the discussion has advanced already. I've been advised to concentrate on the app because it is the most concrete thing that we have, so you see quite a bit of that. But I think we also need to look at ICT in its application societal context, and I'll try to come up with some requirements, which is basically homework for everybody involved. So this is a picture that maybe some of you have seen before that comes from the invention of zero-knowledge protocol elements, which are a good idea, and they come to reduce the risks that you see here for identity management, and there's a special case for age verification using third parties, because you see a user in the bottom, and you see a relating party like a social media, and the user is not necessarily being trusted by the relying party, but the age verifier is maybe trusted. And the first solutions that existed were that basically the relying party would talk directly to the age verifier. We've overcome that. That is good. And because the risk with that kind of scenario is that the relying party would know much more than they need to know, and the age verifier would learn lots of things that they don't need to know, especially how users use social networks. So from that point of view, the wallet is a good idea because it puts power on the user. They see the user now on the top, not on the bottom. And in a way, you can maybe say the age verification app is a small version of the wallet. And again, using zero-knowledge proofs, using open source is good ideas. So much for the good ideas. Now we have statements by the European Commission on the app, and I hope the Commission colleague is still around maybe. And I've quoted now statements from 15th of April, and you see everything is perfect. It is, you download the app, you prove the age, no problem, working on any device, fully open source, everybody can use it. Like it's technically ready, it was said. And then you compare that with the age verification blueprint document that you have, and you try to bring both things together. And so, I don't have only 5 minutes, so this is a list of things which the app can actually not deal with. You see that 2/3 of minors we've discussed that are still there. VPNs. Do we now want to restrict the Commission because VPNs because they go around this? Tricking biometrics. This example, attack scenario can be my older brother gives me the app with their smartphone and I use a social network. That is clearly possible, and I can manipulate my picture to look like my elder brother or vice versa. I'm living in a family with many children. Don't tell me how this doesn't work. And borrowed or fake certificates or devices, similar story. And half legal services. So anyway, the question is, what is actually the requirement specification for the app? It's solving a problem that has not been defined. So it's a difficult job to solve a problem that has not been defined. I don't envy the Commission, but we need to be careful with statements about it. So I try to analyze 2 elements now quickly. What will the app tell the relying party? And how is that privacy perfect, or has it an issue? So this is why you find now here an age verification and relying party. So you find a statement. The statement says, without revealing any other personal information, completely anonymous, users cannot be tracked. That is what Ms. von der Leyen has said. And you look into the specification and you read domain-specific identifiers or pseudonyms are used to enable users to avoid. Very nice, but it says pseudonyms. And now what is pseudonyms? Are pseudonyms used once or several times, and by whom. If you look into the specification, you find text and you say something like there's 30 attestations, which are probably these pseudonyms, and they can be given out and can be used by the user. And now the question is, will it happen? Well, how will it work? And you see that under how far would 30 attestations get users. So if every web page that I call on needs to have its own attestation, many attestations are needed. I'd like to see a robustness test about that. Is it really working out or not? If relying parties are reusing attestations for user journeys on the website, then they can build links between this kind of things. If relying parties are connecting this to user accounts, then linkage happens like it always did, just with an additional certificate. So the question is not so much what does the app do, but what does the relying party do with the app? And then, of course, the question is a single use of attestation guaranteed? Who guarantees that? Who is the authoritative developer of the app? Well, there is not the European Commission app. There is several apps because it's a blueprint, which is a nice idea for technical dialogue. And I don't think it's a bad idea to start dialogue with software, but don't claim it's already and complete and perfect when you're in the middle of a dialogue. That is an issue. Now, the other thing is, what will the app take in? That is the other side. You see the app on the smartphone, which is the example. These pictures are from the Commission, by the way. Only the red thing is on me. And you see the provider EAS notes. Okay, so there will be something in like from the EAS notes. And my addition is this little green lady, because that is for the biometric aspect of it that I wanted to add. So the little green lady you didn't have before. So what is the app taking in? Presentation of a proof of age attestation, ID card, passport. So far, so good. That may work. Info to authenticate the app user against anybody else. And here we again at the family story. So it says authenticate users reliable manner. Password, PIN code, biometric verification. Password, PIN code, classical security thing. We can have that. By the way, and it says additional factors. So password, PIN code, okay, we know that. And biometric verification, that is sensitive personal data. Special protection is needed. Who decides which variant is being used? The biometric storage is already being attacked by somebody. There's more stored than is needed, and Simon Moore has lined this out in his presentation, and part of it may even rely on the platform. So we're coming back to the question is, what is the requirement specification? The app status is too unclear to give any assurances at this moment in time, not only because of the app itself, but because of the environmental context of it. So what is the main issue then? And if the app is ignoring its context, which it maybe cannot do in the way how it's being developed and it's used, then it can be a problem. If it's promising everything to everybody at the same time, it may become a problem in itself. And the issue that I see from a privacy perspective is that you can have an app which is doing some things, then it doesn't work. Then people will say, we want more data, we want better assurances. Then they collect more data. Then it will be upgraded. Then people try to find other ways around it. In the end, we're collecting more and more data, because data collection is easy and affordable. And the consequences, they are expensive, because they have all these side effects that we don't want to have. And that is a problem when you say we have a solution. So basically, and this especially holds for, and this is my success examples here, or my success homework in a way. When you have a controversial in the cybersecurity context, you need to agree on what you want to achieve. Then you can develop software. Then you want to test and requirements, but also against unwanted side effects. So the loops that we are seeing, we need more of that, and we need to have them defined in a defined project plan. And then you need to be prepared for several cycles to this. And if you consider European digital sovereignty, which I think is also important, okay, digital sovereignty, then you need to check who are the sources for your solution, and who has the know-how to do something and to implement changes, for example. And remember the COVID app that we had. In the end, we were depending on Google and Apple to make the design decisions on the COVID app. This time, we have an available platform, which is Android. We have security, which is partly dependent on the Android platform. We haven't seen it on other platforms. We need to integrate it. Sorry, this is homework.
Professor Rannenberg, you should be concluding your...
This is the last slide.
Yeah.
This is the last slide. So this was on the software development process, I think, which is important. It's good that one starts software development, but we're not completely there. We have many, many flaws in it, partly because of software development itself, partly because of the application context. And then, of course, the political context. There is an offline world. Safe spaces offline is something that we should not forget about. And content providers have a responsibility. DSA was mentioned. You're the legal people, you know that. And if you put everything to the family, don't wonder if they question it. And the last point of view, don't rely on winning access control fights against your children. Children want something, and when children want something, they get it somehow. So you need to find ways how you protect children by making them understand, not by restricting them too much.
Thank you, Professor Rannenberg. Now I give the floor to Mr. Simeon de Roubier. Please stick to the 5 minutes allocated. There will be the opportunity for further discussion in the Q&A session following your presentations. The floor is yours.
Thank you. From a perspective of fundamental rights, age verification is deeply problematic. It's driving attention away from the real cause of the problem, which is the fact that platforms want to keep users stuck to their phone, stuck to their app all the time, even if it comes at the cost of polarizing, shocking, or addictive content. The real problem is not how early they have access to the app, but how bad these apps are for them. Great. This is exactly what the DSA is supposed to do, mitigate this kind of risk, force platforms to adapt their design, their business model, even if it comes to that, as we see in the TikTok preliminary findings. If risks are duly mitigated, there is no need to exclude young people from online platforms or other services. If we take the reverse of that, if we removed young people, we also remove the incentives that platforms have to ensure safety for young people and other users on their platform. Especially in a context where lawmakers are trying to avoid the regulatory burden, avoiding the unnecessary red tape, I'm not sure why we're adding more rather than trying to enforce and protect the DSA and the GDPR, which are being watered down through other legislative procedures, the omnibus. Unless the DSA enforcement proves impossible, which we need to give time to, it is disproportionate to ban or exclude young people from the start. Young people, as was pointed out by Kai, do want to access online spaces and other spaces. Why? Not because it's mere entertainment, but because for many of them it's really important for their life, for the community they build, for the people they find. It can be a lifeline, and we want to cut them off of that rather than make it safe for them. Difficult. They will want to bypass whatever measures we put because it's not about smoking tobacco, as we heard the Commission compare it to. It's about exercising your fundamental rights, and young people, believe it or not, they do have fundamental rights. And they need to be ensured and protected, not restricted. Speaking of them, young people don't want top-down, oppressive and restrictive measures. They want to be empowered. They want to be growing autonomous into adulthood. They want to grow resilient. And I know because I was involved in the collaboration of a piece with young people, which was signed by 16 national youth councils and 11 youth organizations representing marginalized groups such as LGBT youth, disabled youth, racialized youth. To quote them, allow me to quote them, "When we understand the reasoning behind safety measures and are given meaningful choices, we are far less likely to resist or bypass them. In any case, we do not want a future where our rights are overridden for our own good, or where online participation depends on one's ability or willingness to provide identification documents or biometrics." As you see in China, Korea, Australia, more than 2/3 of youth bypass age restrictions. It's not because the age restrictions are badly designed. They will always be badly designed. It's because we're cutting them off from something that's important to them. It will happen even with the best, most privacy-preserving app, if it comes to that, if the Commission delivers what it's pitched. Because, as we heard, yes, the Commission itself acknowledges that a parent can give access to age-gated content or applications to their child. But it's not only the parent who can, it's an uncle, an older sibling, a cousin, a random person in the street. I could go to the school of my young brother and do the age verification for many of their friends. No one would know because The Commission wants the app to be trusted, otherwise we run into mass surveillance. Well, this is what we get. We either get mass surveillance or an app which allows its own circumvention by design. We need to be aware of what we are age-gating young people from. Social media, interpersonal communications apps like WhatsApp, AI, the list grows fast. When it comes to WhatsApp and other interpersonal communications apps, that's already in scope of a proposal, which is called the Child Sexual Abuse Regulation, which is in trilogue as it's currently. And the risk there is that we're not just age-gating social media. We age-gate app stores, we age-gate WhatsApp, Signal, other tools like that. That's why in the Parliament position on that file, as you probably know, the Parliament's position is to make age verification optional rather than mandatory and to put in place safeguards, strong safeguards. But safeguards, technical safeguards, they don't ensure proportionality. Everybody is still suspect until proven innocent, until proven adult with age verification. And young people will still be excluded. But not only them, also every person who doesn't have ID documents, every person who doesn't have a smartphone with an NFC chip, people who don't have the digital literacy, lots of people beyond children will be incapable of of jumping through the hoops of the age verification. Lastly, to conclude, this is about an app, but there will be 27 apps, which may or may not follow what the Commission wants them to do. They may not be as privacy preserving as we all want them to do. That's very problematic. And we might think, oh, but the EID wallet will solve that. It is regulated in a way that is privacy preserving. However, if you look at the implementing acts of the EID wallet,
you should be concluding.
Yes, I'm concluding. Thank you. The implementing acts show that the Commission is adding the processing of biometric data, which was not foreseen in the regulation, which was actually taken out of the text in the trilogues. And the Commission is also weakening the principles of linkability, which instead of being prevented, now needs to be hindered. There are other grounds. I'll stop here. I'll welcome your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And I give the floor now to Mrs. Julia Torchio, again for 5 minutes. The floor is yours, Mrs. Torchio.
Good afternoon. I'll try to be concise as possible.
Thank you.
It's an honor to be here. For those of you who don't know Five Rights Foundation, we are a children foundation, so we focus specifically on preserving the rights of children, which essentially is not only the right to protection, but also the right of enjoyment of age-appropriate experiences and of access to information under international law, and specifically the UNCRC, and the following general comment number 25. So again, we work on ensuring that kids can access the digital world knowledgeably, creatively, and fearlessly. We have a network of over 300 youths, which we can consult. And I'm here today to present our position, which is essentially partially built on the consultations that we've had with these kids, and also some findings from our most recent report on age assurance. And I want to speak about age assurance specifically because we've spoken about age verification, and I feel like we have maybe forgotten that there's also a larger umbrella term for that. So I'll start with the definition of age assurance, which is an umbrella term to refer to systems or features that purport to verify or estimate the age or age range, emphasis on the range, of a user. Age verification is one method of conducting age assurance, but there's more than that, and they can be ranked based on the level of implementation, whether it's a browser, whether it's the device level, whether it's the service level, but also based on the actual reliability of the service. At Five Rights, we speak about age assurance and not age verification. In speaking about age assurance, I want to make clear that we don't support a blanket adoption of age assurance methods. We recognize the fact that they can be useful tools, but they're gateway tools. The main point is what they are gateways to: a safer internet environment for everyone, not only for children. If the internet environment is safe for everyone, then it's also going to be safe for children. When that is not achievable, either through the enforcement of our current regulation, whether it's the DSA, whether it's the GDPR, whether it's the AI Act, whether it's the Audiovisual Media Services Directive, then we need to implement age assurance methods. And that's what we're supporting at Five Rights. We have consulted, as I said, our network of kids, and we have produced a report. So I will go over some of the main findings. Essentially, the state of the art is that there's two main issues. There's an issue of implementation at the European level, but there's also an issue of scope. When it comes to the issue of implementation, we have seen that, and this is based on a recent report that was published through a DSA coordination network in October 2025. We have seen that platforms that are mandated under the guidelines and the DSA, Article 28 and 34, to produce risk assessment reports, are still not using the appropriate age assurance methods to essentially perform age checks for users. They are then in breach of EU law. And we welcome the Commission's preliminary findings against Meta's Instagram and Facebook. When it comes to the scope, however, because the guidelines refer to Article 28 of the DSA, there's a clear gap in scope of protection. It only applies to platforms or services that fall under the scope of the DSA, which means that, for example, gaming platforms or other services like AI chatbots and Companion do not fall under the scope and therefore are not mandated to essentially apply age assurance, as mandated by the guidelines. So we are here because, again, we believe that age assurance could be a useful tool to protect children online, and we want to see implementation of lawful, effective, and rights-respecting age assurance methods. But also we want to make that connection, and I guess maybe that goes back to the previous conversations and also to the questions that were raised in the other session. We want to make that connection because age assurance is not the end destination. A safer internet environment is a destination, and age assurance is the gateway. Age assurance should also be connected to other conversations about age-appropriate design and implementation of legislation. We believe that there's a real possibility at this moment in time to perform age assurance that is lawful and rights respecting, and we have established 5 criteria for it. So age assurance should be risk-based and proportionate. Essentially, we want to see a better implementation of Article 25 of GDPR on safety and privacy by design, but we also want age assurance to be proportionate and based on risk assessment reports, and when it comes to kids, that should be child rights impact assessments. Then it should be privacy preserving and secure, effective, as I've already mentioned, accessible and inclusive, and that, I guess, goes to the other points. We have to realize that not everyone has access to a hard proof of identity, and that will then require essentially layering of different age assurance methods in order for the online environment to be accessible to everyone. And also we want it to be transparent and accountable. And when I say we, again, that goes back to kids. This is what kids want. Kids do have an opinion about age assurance, and this is what they want. At the same time, we want kids and parents both to be included in the conversation, because if they are not, they will not trust the age check methods, and they will find ways to bypass them because kids are smart. So again, I highly encourage you to check out our report. It's very long, but it's very detailed, and also it includes the perspective of some of our work we've done on Australia and other countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Torchio. And now I give the floor to Mr. Julian Corbett from OpenAge Global Initiative. You have the floor for 5 minutes, Mr. Corbett.
Merci bien, ravi d'être parmi vous. Je vais faire la...
Thank you. It's great to be with you. My presentation will be in English to make things easier, but I'm very happy to be here today.
Julian Corbett. I head the OpenAge Initiative. What is the OpenAge Initiative? It's a public interest initiative that was announced just 6 months ago as an interoperable layer that solves many of the problems that we have been discussing today. And we'll touch upon why these intractable problems that we have seen around age assurance are actually not as complex, and we are far closer to real-world solutions than are often discussed. There are some important tensions that exist around age assurance in general, and many of them have come up today. We have heard from many of the people asking the questions, as well as people on the panel, the concerns that users rightly have when it comes to privacy, the issues that exist around friction, and the issues around cost. Now, there are some principles that are repeated over and over again, and there were some really good ones that were just mentioned just before me, around what is required for a trusted age signal. Now, a lot of these some of these terms were relatively fringe just like a year ago and are now commonplace. Everybody on the previous panel pretty much mentioned the need of interoperability. Everybody mentioned the need of privacy preserving, whether it be zero-knowledge proof or double-blind anonymity. OpenAge, as a preview, was actually, so the operating headquarters of OpenAge are in Paris, France, and it was actually built by a French company called Opal that literally took what was described by Mr. Toubiana and made a product out of it and enabled how to scale up the double-blind anonymity approach. But there is zero-knowledge proof approach. Anyhow, the point is that this is becoming a standard, agreed minimum standard that should be abided by. Only France has put it into law. We hope to see other jurisdictions require that standard of privacy. Some of the ones that are less often talked about are the ideas of cross-platform, multi-threshold. It needs to be frictionless, otherwise it's going to break the internet. One of the ones that we believe are really the building block, and so much of the tension exists around this, is the idea of ensuring that it is fundamentally separating digital identity and age. These are two different issues. We come from a world where digital identity in our passport, and that is what we were presenting. And so the whole notion of age has been caught up in this notion of identity. The online world is very different. For age assurance purposes, not KYC purposes, all we have to do is provide an age credential. And this is a fundamental difference. And how do we solve this is on the one issue that I want to focus on today, which is portability. Portability is not the one that is really talked about most, but portability is what makes interoperability real. And portability is important because this is what addresses the problem of repeated verifications over and over again. There is no lack of age signals that exist today. There are plenty of age signals. People have been verified. Everybody in this room has been verified gazillion times. You are verified at your school, you are verified at the bank, you are verified by your telco. These signals exist. The issue is how do we make sure that it is portable? And the idea of portability is that it isn't a technical mechanism, it's a structural shift, transfer of power. And if you put the user at the center and give them access and use and right to be able to present their age signal in a way that they see fit, you completely change the dynamic of trust. I think Madame Sorel was talking about trust. This is such a fundamental issue. This is why everything is broken in the system today, is that we are seeing the lack of trust between where these age signals are coming from. And we are seeing people retain age signals. And fundamentally, age should not be monetized. This is where we are seeing a problem between tensions on private sector in the verification industry, wallet solutions that are emerging, where everybody is looking at who owns this age signal and everybody trying to aggregate in their own silos this age signal. And the reality is that age signals do not belong to the users, to the verifiers who issued it. It doesn't belong to the platforms that require it. It doesn't belong to the operating systems that host it. And it doesn't even belong to the governments who observe it. A user is the subject of their own age, and they are the ones that should have the control of it. I need one more minute. The fact is, all of these age signals exist. How do you make them interoperable? How do you make them reusable for users? Well, one of the ways that we accelerate that is by making portability mandated. The European Union has an incredible track record at doing exactly this, and every single time users have benefited from being entrusted with their own data, whether it be from number portability, the GDPR Article 20, all the way through the Data Act. We have seen this over and over again. And this is not theoretical. This is deployed today. We have over 40 platforms that are using age keys across multiple territories. We have dozens of millions of usage of age keys. It reduces friction time by around 30 years for every 10 million usage versus traditional verification methods. It is interoperable with all wallet systems. So like with Google Wallet, we want to work with the EU AV apps type solutions. Anybody that has trusted, authentic age signals, allowing that to be portable, placing it within an age key and enabling users to have control of their age is a solution that is working, that is deployed, that users embrace, that provides age-adaptive internet, and that platforms are adopting already at scale today. I thank you and I welcome your questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Corbett. And now we open the round of political groups, again 1.5 minutes, and then there will be a reply by the guest speaker to whom you addressed your question, also for a maximum of 1.5 minutes. So we start with EPP. Mrs. Kenichi, floor is yours.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, I'd like to thank all of the panelists for the very in-depth and interesting presentations they've given. I could have many questions, but given the time, I have one question for Professor Rannenberg. I must say he was very precise in setting out the details of a complicated system, which is how you can develop software and what the age verification requirements for apps can be. And you didn't shy away from saying how complex the technology is. But could I just ask you, in your view, from a legal and technical point of view, could there be mechanisms which at an upstream level would prevent people from downloading apps because they're not old enough to do so and to have an account? So could you have age verification mechanisms at the App Store level already? And in more general terms, how can we make the platforms more responsible so that the mechanisms that they adopt for age verification actually guarantee that the rules will be respected and won't be all too easy to circumvent? Or at the very least, very vulnerable, to misuse by the user. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kenichi. Professor Rannenberg.
Okay, molte grazie. The app stores can be, of course, protected by age verification as good and as bad as any other platform, let's face it. And that's actually one of the restrictions, of course, of app stores that are relying on certificates, because so far certificates exist maybe only for 18 or 16-year-old people. And what do you take as in your 13-year-old? Do you need to introduce certificates all over the world here? That is a problem. My point would be, indeed, age verification has certain uses. We have seen examples on what you can do, or age assurance. We should say assurance, not verification in this case, because the technology for verification works, but only in a closed world. So I think your other question is more important. What can we make service providers, platform providers more reliable? I understand the DSA is a good idea. I heard some concerns that DSA is maybe not enforced as much as it could be, and that the age verification or age assurance or whatever would be an excuse to not do that. I think that would be the wrong way. And content providers are responsible for content. Social network providers are responsible for social moderation. And all of that is needed, and that cannot be taken away. And maybe there is some specific scenarios where age assurance can help, but it should not take away the responsibility from those who are responsible for the content. And that means, of course, they need to moderate things. And that means also, of course, if you want to check how an age verifier is and how an age and verification is being used, how is it being used in the context of a certain social platform, which means that social platforms need to collaborate on the way how they're going to use age assurance maybe, what successes and non-successes that they have, and what they're aiming for. So they need to be much more explicit in talking to us about it. The Commission is putting something out with the limits as I described it. They cannot solve the problem on their own, but they can push, hopefully, and providers to support.
Thank you, Professor Rannenberg. S&D, Mrs. Kalyuran.
Yes, thank you. I'd also like to thank the speakers in this panel, but also in the first panel. When I listen to the discussions, there are two sides. Those who believe in age verification, assurances, estimation, whatever word you use, and the others who say that it's contrary to fundamental rights. And at all these discussions, they're sitting in different panels. And at all these discussions, I do see that there is any kind of convergence or coming closer to each other. I belong to the school of Professor Rannenberg and Simeon de Bruer. I do not believe that age verification, assurance, estimations will change the picture. We need safe online for everybody. Unfortunately, we are losing the battle with public opinion. So my question is to Professor and to Mr. Brewer, what should we do to convince parents that instead of shutting everything down, politicians, parents, politicians, public opinion, instead of shutting verification, introducing new rules, let's start implementing what we have and let's do it responsibly. And I also listened to what the other speaker said. On paper, everything's right. Lawful age verification, all the principles that have been listed, enormous studies, but doesn't work in practice. In practice, we have the app that was described by the Commission and severely criticised by your panel. So can we really do a product that is safe, secure, lawful, and respects privacy?
Thank you, Mrs. Kaliudan.
And I know I'm putting you in a bad position. You just have 30 seconds. I'm sorry.
Professor Rannenberg.
I thought I have 90 seconds.
Yeah, no, 90 seconds, yes.
Okay, so anyway, first, I'm not sure whether we're losing the battle. Actually, I got feedback on my slides from parent organizations, and that say, hey, they don't really want to restrict their children. That is one point. The other point is my father always had some experience people cannot be told about, they need to make them. And that is frustrating because it would mean that we would have whatever kind of age and restriction coming in, and then we learn that it doesn't work. Maybe we can learn from the examples of other countries like Australia, UK, where you see things now. Otherwise, I think it's just patient explanation on the side effects. We have that all of the time in IT and IT security. I mean, there is scenarios, and that is the other thing. We can see whether we can do some more small-scale trials in some areas where maybe then one can learn better in detail what is happening to get people together. So it is more of a consensus-oriented Scandinavian solution. Make a trial together, see what you can develop if you're open-hearted to learn. Against propaganda, I think you can only report facts. That's everything that I have. That was on your question on losing the battle or on bringing. There was one other question. That was. Okay.
Thank you. Difficult to answer because I don't have the keys, but I think that if you want to convince parents and politicians that this is not the right direction to take, it suffices to show that this app, if it's the perfect app that we're being sold, is also the perfect app for circumvention. Therefore, not only it's going to be very ineffective at blocking young people from accessing what they shouldn't access according to our standards, it's also going to be dangerous for what we impose on everyone, what everyone will have to do to prove their identity multiple times. So I think this is the dilemma we face. Either we have mass privacy-preserving age verification, which is circumventable, or we have mass age verification or assessment, which enables mass surveillance. The choice is easy to make in the EU, I believe. We have to realize that the app will not be as perfect as it's pitched to be, because even the best privacy-preserving, anonymity-preserving censorship tool remains a censorship tool.
So if I may jump in?
Very briefly, yes.
So age verification and age assurance, it does not mean banning. In order to create an age-adaptive internet, one that is empowering for younger generations, you need an age signal. And the issue around how we get that age signal in a way that is privacy-preserving is, I think, what we're discussing. But we have plenty of examples of actually more empowering, more age-adaptive internet that are coming once an age signal is there. The issue of banning is, I think, a separate one from the one of how to get an age signal. And the concerns that users have around the failure of age verification is when age and identity are mixed together. But it is incorrect to say that you cannot have age assurance without mass surveillance. It is simply not the case, and hence why we have solutions such as double-blind anonymity. And those are proven today to be able to work at scale. And so it's actually happening today. And one, just to illustrate, Open Age Initiative was endorsed by the Free Speech Coalition, which is literally went to the Supreme Court to fight age verification, because when they saw Open Age Initiative, they'd like, okay, well, this is actually a path that actually makes sense in terms of how to do this in a way that is respectful not only of the protection of youth, but the freedom of adults. So let's hope.
Thank you. And yes, now I don't see any PFE speaker or ECR. Renew group, are you taking the floor?
Yep.
Madam Stefanova.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to all the experts. Maybe one technical question to Mr. Corbett about the Open Age Initiative. So is it, you mentioned you wanted to work with the Commission's EID. Have you talked about the working together already? How do you see this cooperation? Because I don't understand if it is more of a separate technological solution that would be added onto the Commission's age verification app, or how would that collaboration work? Have you been in touch with any member states that would adopt your initiative, maybe into their own digital IDs inside their own nation states? Thank you. And then I have a question for 5 Rights, because in Slovakia we had a survey recently where they were asking young people, mostly teenagers from 12 until 17, whether they would be willing to verify their age in order to get on social media. And they said, the majority, I think over 60%, said yes, at the same time that they will try, and some of them will try to circumvent these age verification mechanisms in any way they can. Yet they still agreed in principle with being asked what your age is before going on a certain platform. It ties back to what Mr. Corbett was saying, I think. Do you have any specific statistics like this, or does this come across with your youth consultations, some sort of this thinking that, yes, we will try to circumvent, but we're not against, because we are talking about young people, and I think they need to be involved in this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Stefanova. Mr. Corbett.
Thank you so much for the question. So to clarify, OpenAge's product, which is an age key, and you could go and create your own at agekey.org and find out about Open Age Initiative on openinitiative.org, where the APIs are available for everybody to look at. It's something that the platforms implement. And so wherever they are doing age assurance, they offer the option for users at the end of a first-time verification to save that as a reusable age key, which is exactly like a pass key saved on your device as a user, and you can represent that elsewhere. And passkeys are already native within every OS and every browser, so there's no app to download, no account to create. And it is the same secure enclave as you use for accessing your Gmail account or your bank using a passkey. So it sits there on the user's device. And as such, we have around 40 platforms right now that have adopted this, and testing not widely in Europe, a little bit in France, in Italy, some in the UK, but primarily in territories like Brazil, and there's some big rollouts that are happening in Australia around that. So in terms of the interoperability, we talk with all of the wallet holders wherever they are. Anybody that has an authentic source of age signal is something that we engage with. One of the big entities that we work with is schools, because parents are desperate to have a solution to be able to provide an age signal for their child to be able to provide an age-appropriate experience for them. And in order to do that, they need to provide a reliable age signal and not a facial age estimation that is plus or minus 1 billion people on planet Earth, but something that is actually an authentic source that schools have and that parents could optionally use to create an age signal in order to be able to ensure that their children can navigate a safer internet online. So we talk with everybody to answer your question.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can come in on the surveys. As I mentioned, we've done 2 surveys as a baseline information gathering process for the report. The first one was specifically on the digital age of majority, and the second one was on age checks. However, the way that the consultations were designed do not allow us for quantitative findings. We only have qualitative findings, so I can just maybe go through some of the points. Essentially, children are very concerned about the implementation of age assurance methods. They report needing to trust the process.
Please speak more slowly.
Sorry about it. They fear that if age assurance is done directly through the platform, then that will resort to a privacy right infringement. They then would prefer to place their trust in third-party token mechanisms, and they do have reported that they will only respect age assurance if they do perceive it as legitimate. So we do have some sort of findings that are aligned with the ones in Slovakia. So that's why we're saying that we need to keep them involved in the conversation, because then it kind of increases the trust both at the level of kids but also parents, because parents are also fundamental in then circumventing the bans because they're the ones providing the IDs or the setting up the accounts. So we do have some sort of findings that are aligned.
Thank you. Any other member wishing to take the floor? Yes, Ms. Sippel.
Just a short addition to everything we heard today. To some extent, when my colleague asked that they asked young people if they are ready to verify their age, I think to some extent that's the wrong question. Because we all now have to verify with such a system, and we all have always to tell what age we are. So it's not a question only to young people if they are ready to accept, it's a question to all of us. I also am a little bit concerned regarding the question we talked about age verification, but for what purposes, for what kind of services, platforms, whatever. In the real world, you might say there is a shop only selling alcohol and you have to prove you are above the age of 18. But do we find such a shop in the internet? Or is it that providers are offering different services? And what does it mean once the service is asking for your age? Are they then sending that message to all their services, or how is that working? And I also would like to come back to another question, and I know I should have asked the Commission earlier, but I would also like to come back to the question, why the hell do we need to talk about that? We have so many legislation on the table to protect people. We have GDPR, we have e-privacy, we have DSA, we have the AI Act, and a number of other legislations. But obviously, we are totally weak. We are not in the position to enforce all these rules, which in itself already would not create a perfect situation, but we heard perfect situations are never there. But it would solve a lot of questions. And I really wonder if we are doing the wrong thing. Instead of enforcing what is on the table, we are thinking about ever new legislation, which then again might also not fulfill the task. And it's not only age verification. I wonder why the hell do we need, it's more a question to the Commission, I'm sorry to put it now, why the hell do we need a Digital Fairness Act? Is the digital world not fair? So maybe because we did not ensure all the other legislation. So I think, I remember in end of last mandate, we said we should not concentrate on having ever more legislation. We should concentrate on enforcing.
Thank you, Mrs.
Now we are doing quite the opposite. So maybe you have a solution to come back to the real challenges.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Zippel. Well, I give you the floor, yes.
Okay.
Final remarks.
Yes, okay. I'm getting a bit more time also to think about the question of Ms. Kaljurand now. And I think one element that one can do to try to drive this into some constructive moving forward, of course, is to try to, and there is solution approaches that are proposed on the table. The colleague has just about the signal thing. Why don't we have a trial to see how this works in one of the more complex social network scenarios? Ms. Zippel has just said, hey, there is mixed platforms. So put a solution to a strong test and see in which scenarios it works and how it works and what it does. And ideally do it in a way, of course, that we learn also later for the wallet discussion that we have anyway on the table and see how that interflicts with the wallet with the wallet implementation, because there was a remark that maybe the wallet implementation is not as full privacy friendly as it should be, or as nice as it should be from the legislation itself, because the implementing acts may have an issue there. So maybe we can learn something here. Of course, the wallet is much more complex and should be something voluntary and not something restrictive. But we can maybe learn something on trying to apply some of these age verification things on specific areas. And well, why this is coming up, I can only speculate. I wonder whether somebody has a feeling it's easier for them to get away from other requirements.
Thank you. Any other remark? Just the final one. Yeah.
Just on the last intervention, we absolutely agree. We think that implementation of the current legislation is fundamental. We would like to see GDPR better enforced, as well as the DSA and the AI Act and the AVMSD. And I just want to explain better that, and maybe this has not come across as part of my other remarks, that we believe in banning platforms' access to children and not children's access to platform. Age assurance should be a fail-safe or some sort of backup plan in the case that for whatever reason we're not able to enforce the legislative framework that we currently have. But we do believe in that and we do stand behind it. It's just more thinking what to do, because otherwise children are not safe online.
Thank you. Mr. Brewer.
Thank you. It has been mentioned age verification to prevent buying alcohol or to buy tobacco. I heard the Commission as well say. Thank you for bringing that metaphor. I think what we're talking about here, mostly social media and interpersonal communication services, is really different from tobacco. Tobacco and alcohol don't allow you and don't enable you to exercise your fundamental rights, unlike digital platforms. However bad these platforms are, we can make them better instead of banning people or tailoring forcibly some features. I prefer the metaphor of cycling. Cycling is dangerous. Cycling on the road is dangerous. We don't ban children and young people from cycling on the public road. What we do, we adapt the code, the road code. We adapt the environment. We build cycling lanes so that they and adults can cycle safely. And we also take, besides these collective political measures, we also take measures aimed at individuals. We teach them, we educate them to not speak to strangers, we give them the right tools, lights, helmets, jackets. In the end, we enable them to exercise their freedom of movement to the scale of the town, but we don't.
Thank you, Mr. Rubé. This is not, again, a new presentation. Please, Mr. Corbett, your final remarks. Yeah.
Online harms are very real. There's a lot of bad stuff that happens out there, and a lot of us here are parents. This is a conversation that families have at dinner tables all the time now, how to navigate the online world. This is a very real, very pressing issue. And there's a way of doing this the right way, and there's a way of doing it the wrong way. Banning is not a great way of going in general, and history has shown that. Age-adaptive experience is a much more empowering way of going. Now, it doesn't mean that everything should be age-adapted. There is no reason for a child to be able to access porn content, but yet 70% of children are going to see porn by accident for the first time. Today, the internet has widely relied on tick boxes of I am over the ages of 13, 15, 18, and that has not worked. And so we need age signals that we can trust. And we need to ensure that these age signals can be presented in a way that is empowering for users, a user-centric solution that they control, that they have trust in, and that separates age from identity, so you know that the only thing that you are passing is an age signal in a manner that is completely unlinkable, untraceable, and that actually respects the fundamental privacy that users should be entitled to expect when they are navigating on the online world.
Thank you. Well, he concludes the second panel and this item on our agenda. We thank our speakers for all the information and the the contribution they've made to this important discussion. And we now move to our next item on our agenda. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Intensive design, for example. I mean, one other idea could be, for example, I mean, why don't we have a comparison of this solution against the Commission app in